Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Well, Tony, it's not just like always. Do you know why it's not just so like always, Tony?
I do know why, Tom. Please tell us.
I think you don't actually know. I think that's why you want me to tell you. But Tony, I will tell you. I will cover for you once again.
Okay.
Tony, it's Michigan week. I'm surprised you didn't know. We actually do this. Like we spend a lot of time talking about Ohio State, Michigan, and here it is, Michigan week, and you're like, what? Already? Didn't they just do that
on a Tuesday?
In this economy?
So yes, it is Michigan week, and that is probably the reason we are talking to you live here, 11 p.m. on a Saturday, as we have now moved past Maryland week, the second best week of them all. And now we were talking. This is the last time we probably need to mention Maryland.
That is absolute Rutgers week, I'm pretty sure, by the way.
But now we are here. It is Michigan week. We can finally just dive into everything. And we have already talked a lot about Michigan tangentially and what is the opposite of tangentially, directly, perhaps.
Yes.
And so now we can really start to dive in because it is here. We don't have to be like, oh, no, we need to get back to Maryland. We need to – but back to Penn State. But back to Rutgers, we have often devolved into Michigan talk, and the reason is because it is the best week of the year. It is the biggest rivalry of them all. It is the best rivalry of them all. And if you want to hear Tom and I talk about that some more, you can actually – you may have already been watching it, actually, as I think.
Yes, we put out a special show just talking about the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry and, games we remembered over the years, going back to the 80s and – some of the big games that have happened and how consequential it's been and why it is such a significant rivalry, not just in the Midwest, but nationally in a way that, do you remember in the 90s when there was this like, listen, Ohio State, Michigan is great, but its time has passed. Tony, Florida State is the rivalry, number one national rivalry of the future. It's like Dippin' Dots. The future, the ice cream of the future, ice cream is still the ice cream of the future, right. Even though,
Yes.
Florida State, the Dippin' Dots of college football.
Florida, Tennessee had some in the mid to late 90s in there as well. But please go ahead and throw your questions in the chat there. We'll get to them. We want to talk to you guys about Michigan and Ohio State. We're going to talk to ourselves about this till we're blue or not.
Right.
Not
red,
blue, yes.
Scarlet in the face.
Right. So,
one of us can be red. One of us can be blue.
Oh, are you saying home uniforms for both teams?
I think, you watch the USC UCLA game and it's like, why would they not just do that? Like every year you watch that game and it is visually the coolest game all year. And then they don't do that for other games. Like, why? They're both Nike schools. Well, it's Nike and Jumpman, they're both Nike schools. So, you want to do a little, minor tweak on it and have it be Ohio State wears the scarlet jerseys with the gray sleeves and whatever. But that's fine.
They can't wear their home. Both teams wear their home uniforms when Ohio State's doing an alternate vapor zoom charcoal black uniform for the blackout against Michigan.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, so they should do that, and
Tom, as we're watching all of these games today, and it was a crazy week. We were talking in the car on the drive back from the stadium. As we see a graphic now playing on TV of an Ohio State train and a Michigan train on a collision course. If USC loses this, and Tennessee's already lost, at what point are Ohio State and Michigan already in the playoffs?
Well, if one of the teams wins next week 42 to, we have seen Ohio State beat Michigan 42-13. If someone wins 42-13 next week, I don't think the loser's in. I think at that point you're talking about someone else.
Clemson.
Clemson or someone like that. But if this is a competitive game and the line, the early line that was released was Ohio State by 6.5. If Ohio State wins the game by 7 points, I think you're looking at Georgia. And if Georgia takes care of LSU's out. TCU, maybe TCU keeps winning. But if TCU or USC loses, I think you've got a pretty compelling case that Michigan and Ohio State both end up in the, and what are SEC's fans going to complain? You can't put two teams from the same conference in. That's not. Well, that was not an SEC accent at all. But I'm sorry. Well, the super chats haven't started rolling in, Tony. So
don't give it away for free time.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Why buy the podcast if you get the milk for free? That's the
why buy the Southern accents?
Yes. No, it definitely Alex Gleitman, our buddy Alex Gleitman from BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Speaking of Southern accents,
yes, he's not even the southern. Well, he's like northern New Jersey, which is He brought up the point that it is looking like real plausible that the Big Ten gets 2 teams in right now, and there's a lot of stuff that has to get sorted out between now and then. And if someone wins that game by 3 touchdowns next week, then the loser's probably not getting in. Especially if the loser is Michigan, because Ohio State right now is looking at having the Penn State win, which is looking pretty good. Notre Dame's looking real good. Yeah. Notre Dame handled no one handled their business all day on Saturday, and Notre Dame handled their business, and Penn State handled their business. So that's looking good for Michigan in terms of win for them. Probably a top 10 Penn State. I mean, you could be looking at a number 8 Penn State. That is not out of the realm of possibility if everyone is just kind of going in the toilet all at once. And Notre Dame has a win over North Carolina. Notre Dame has a win over Clemson. If it comes down to Ohio State versus Clemson, there's almost no case for Clemson to get in because they've looked like crap all year. And you have a common opponent who Ohio State won and Clemson lost. And I think that's going to be a very hard case for Clemson to make.
I was looking on Twitter to see if there were any updates on Blake Corum, and really haven't been able to find anything. So if people on the chat know, go ahead and throw it in there. But he had 17 carries in the first half, 17 or 18 carries in the first half, and then gets hurt, comes back in the second half, carries the ball maybe once, and then that was it. And Jim Harbaugh said he was cleared, nothing wrong with the knee structurally, but clearly he was affected and was not able to go, because that's not a game that you hold him out in the second half when you are trying like your life depends on it to get a win in that game. And kudos to Michigan. They did everything they could to get it. They did enough. They really, really went station to station, which is something we've talked about, where it's like a field goal here. You don't like field goals. You were even like, this is not a bad field goal,
Yeah, I'm not 100% opposed to field goals. There are times when it's 4th and 9 where sometimes you got to kick a field goal if it's a close game. And that was not the winning field goal, but the drive before that, it was, Michigan I had some issues. I had more issues with Jim Harbaugh's clock management on that drive than I did with the decision to kick a field goal, because they were running that drive as if, well, certainly we're going to score a touchdown and win this game right now. And then they didn't. And then it was like, oh boy, you did not leave yourself a whole lot of time to go back and kick a second field goal to get out of there. But yeah, if Blake Corum was healthy, Blake Corum would have been playing there, because that was a game where, if Michigan had lost that game, then you're not having if they lose to Ohio State, that would have been now it's do or die next weekend in Columbus. And he was, he came in, and it was a lot like TreVeyon Henderson. Like, TreVeyon Henderson started and then disappeared. And it was very clear that he was still compromised. Blake Corum was very clearly compromised. If Blake Corum's 100%, Blake Corum is playing there because they need Blake Corum. That is a very different team if Blake Corum is playing or if Blake Corum's not playing.
Well, and if he's not playing, it's because he's hurt. And I don't think you can get to 100% in 1 week. If you're not good to go, it's hard to imagine you're going to be 100% next week. Just like when Ryan Williams returned, he was not 100%. When TreVeyon Henderson returned, he was not 100%. So I wonder what they are looking like with him next week. Where is Donovan Edwards in terms of his percentage? Because he has been out for a little while now. I think he carried the ball 2 or 3 times last week, didn't play in this game. And if they don't have him, you saw how thin they were without Blake Corum and without Donovan Edwards, getting down to
CJ Stokes
and Isaiah Gash. Their third and their fourth string. I think Isaiah Gash is a walk-on or former walk-on.
Yeah, and Ohio State was down to their third string running back on Saturday too. But Ohio State's third string running back looked very different than CJ Stokes. I mean, CJ Stokes, true freshman, right? CJ Stokes? Yes. So you've got a true freshman CJ Stokes and a true freshman Dallin Hayden. CJ Stokes has had ball security issues this year. Dallin Hayden has mostly, I don't know that he's put the ball on the ground yet this year. But he has, Dallin Hayden has looked very consistently good. He's had 100-yard games so far this year already. Had a really big game against Maryland. CJ Stokes, 11 carries for 36 yards, averages 3.3 yards per carry, and one of them was 17 yards. So that means the other 10 were for 19 yards. When Blake Corum is in there, Michigan they're not blowing up for 900 rushing yards a game or 70-yard runs here, all over the place. But Blake Corum was very efficient. He had a 37-yarder right off the start of the game, and then the rest of his carries were 17 carries for 71 yards, which is just 5 yards a carry. Yeah. And that's what Blake Corum does. He just gives you 5 yards a carry. And if you can keep going 5 yards at a pop, guess what? Those chains keep moving. Yeah. That's what they need. And I think what we're starting to see from Michigan is the reason that they were running Blake Corum 28, 29, 30 times a game, and I mean, pretty clearly wearing him out, was that's it. That's what they got. Because, the wide receiver play has not really been there for them this year. They lost Eric All. Mm-hmm. They lost Luke Schoonmaker to an injury. And I don't know if we've got an update on him. But, the third tight end, Loveland, has been okay. But he has not been, you can't carry an offense on your third tight end. And you have not, between the throws downfield from J.J. McCarthy, all being just, he has one speed. Yeah. He throws, everything is 103 miles an hour. And the wide receiver core, I mean, Andrew Anthony, my dude, you got to catch that ball. Like, even when J.J. McCarthy puts it right on someone's hands between the corner and the safety, you got to bring the ball in.
Well, and Andrew Anthony had that one hit him in the hands, and it split the coverage perfectly. That was right there. But we've seen Cornelius Johnson have issues tracking the ball. These guys are not that great tracking the ball. Roman Wilson, he had a drop in this game as well. So what they are not able to do, and the execution is so spotty with them, that for them to take advantage of Ohio State's issues in the pass defense, things would have to go so much more right than they generally do with Michigan's downfield passing for it to really make an impact and take effect in this game. But if Michigan's having some running issues, like you can't, I don't think you can just, play action and dink and dunk. You've got to hope you hit some of those deep shots, and you got to keep taking them. And I think Ohio State needs to continue throwing deep to Marvin Harrison. Like, you're getting close. So eventually you're going to hit a couple of these, but if you're like, well, they never worked, then they're not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with Ohio State, I think you've seen them. Marvin Harrison's had 11, 12, 15 kind of targets the last couple of weeks. And if you complete half of them, like, normally you want to complete more than half of your passes, but the way Marvin Harrison is getting the ball downfield, he's bringing stuff in. You're getting some yak out of him too, where if you're picking up first downs every time you get there, like, okay, you can do that. If you're picking up 6-7 first downs on Marvin Harrison receptions, that's going to be, because he's going to hit a big one too. And I think Michigan's defensive backfield really just, you look at who they've played this year, and they haven't been really tested. And I don't know that Michigan's defensive backfield is going to have problems with Marvin Harrison and with the Ohio State passing offense, but we don't know that they're not. And the pass defense numbers look pretty okay, but then you look at who they've played, and it's like, well, yeah, of course they look bad. It's like playing Mike Leach team, and it's like, wow, you defended the run really well. Like, well, yeah, but they weren't really. That's not really what they do.
Yeah, when you play Army and after week 1 and you're leading the nation in pass defense. But, Mike Morris, defensive end, didn't play in this one as well. So I don't know what the situation is there with him. Obviously, you're probably not trying to push as many guys during this week, and because you're looking for everybody to be as healthy as possible next week. We saw the same thing with Ohio State. But, like, if he was good to go, if he's not dressed, before the game, then obviously he's out. But if he's sitting there dressed, and just this became an all on deck game, and they're missing a lot of hands right now.
Yeah, and both teams are really short on guys, and it's really too bad, because this has been two teams we've been looking forward to seeing play all year long. And then it's like, well, now Travion Henderson's not there. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba going to be there? Is how healthy is Blake Corum? You've got Mike Morris. I mean,
well, what's going on with the Ohio State cornerbacks?
Right? Yeah. I mean, how many Ohio State cornerbacks are healthy? We saw Matt Jones leave the game.
Lathan Ransom broke his hand.
Lathan Ransom broke his thumb. Tommy Eichenberg apparently has two broken hands. Which, I mean, I guess the good news is he can't break another one.
I don't know that that's true, Tom.
Scissor hands.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you look through it, and it's like, but that's just kind of this year has kind of been. Hendon Hooker went down. We were in the car and listening to the game. It didn't sound good, and from the fact that everyone on Twitter all at once said, "Oh, that didn't look good," it sounds like that didn't look good, and that may have been. I think it was a non-contact thing, which generally says ACL to me, but this is kind of what college football is this year. No one is perfect. No one is no one is unbeatable, and not even Georgia. And you have all sorts of teams playing shorthanded, and that's what it is this time of year. It is just you have it's like those cooking shows where it's just like, all right, you have a rutabaga, you have a box of macaroni and cheese, and you have a jar of hot fudge. You have to make a 7-course dinner. Like, all right, well, I mean, we can't not show up for the game, so I guess we just have to sort of figure it out with what we've got.
Watching UCLA, seeing Dorian Thompson-Robinson banging
in his 12th year.
In his 12th year, banging his hand on a helmet. His hand is all taped up. He's hurting. That's what it is this year, this time of year. And if you can make it this far and only be this banged up, you're still playing.
JJ asks, does the winner of the game get blown out in the playoffs at this point? And my question is, by whom?
Right. And why would you my issue is you just assume that Georgia blows somebody out, and you're not necessarily looking at Georgia as closely as you're looking at Ohio State and Michigan. And if you did, I wonder how many Georgia fans are thinking somebody's going to blow out the Dogs. But of course, we know it just means more in the SEC, so they would never think that. But when you only look at your team and you just assume what's going on over there is stellar, it's not the case. Doesn't mean Ohio State's not going to get blown out or Michigan's not going to get blown out. But there's enough to have been seen from Georgia at this point to think, you know what, they are not impervious to another team.
No, they're definitely not. And they on Saturday, while everyone else was looking terrible against inferior opponents, Georgia went out and dominated dominated Kentucky 16-6. I mean, this is what everyone is. Everyone is flawed this year. Even the teams that everyone is acting as if they're invulnerable to anything. They're in that spot too. And I mean, right now we're sitting and watching, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson looks like he just got a concussion. So I mean, it's just even UCLA, like, okay, now their quarterback is down. Well, Tennessee's quarterback is down. Michigan's running back is down. Ohio State's wide receiver, leading wide receiver coming into the year has missed basically the whole season. This is just the year that it is.
Well, and Ryan Day said a few weeks ago that it feels like there are just more injuries around college football this year, and that may just be a coach trying to explain away all of his injuries. It's like, oh, maybe it's like this all over the place, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure that's what it is.
Yeah, well, it's
don't bring up the turf. You might convince Michigan not to come to town.
Yeah, it's this has been not quite 2007 level crazy, but I think if you're thinking like Ohio State, the Ohio State Michigan, they're so flawed, they're going to get smoked by whoever they play. I would encourage you to make a top 10 list.
Yeah,
make a top 25 list. And you will find it's like you get to number about 5, and it's like super chat from DK. Both teams save gadgets for the game. Has Michigan been saving a downfield passing attack all year just for this week?
They're not
diabolical.
They're not throwing incompletions on purpose. So I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's something that they can't just turn it on now. They may hit some, and we've been very adamant that they will hit at least one. because we've harped on it long enough, and everybody else has harped on it long enough that it is going to happen. But it's not something where, I'm just going to throw a little bit wide, that sort of thing. I don't know what kind of wrinkles there will be. I don't know that Michigan needed any wrinkles last year. And, isn't man ball enough?
Well, man ball was enough last year. I don't know if man ball is enough this year against what is, Ohio State did not play a fantastic game on defense against Maryland. But it is unquestionably a better Ohio State defense. It is not an invincible Ohio State defense, but it is a better Ohio State defense than it was last year by a lot. And, I don't think they have to shut Michigan down. I don't think they need to hold Michigan to 3 points. But if they're just better against Michigan, then that probably, that maybe that's enough. If the offense is, if the Michigan defense is just a little bit worse than it was last year because they don't have Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo, and the Ohio State defense is, just a little bit better, that may be enough to get them, add in the home field advantage, all that kind of stuff. Super chat from Jordan Kapler. Sure, the players are banged up this late in the season, but no one is taking into consideration the physical toll being a member of the media has on somebody. Buckeye Huddle staff equals elite athletes.
Truer words have never been spoken about the wear and tear of Kevin's driving.
I got to tell you, I get out. I walk out of those games at the end of a Saturday night, and it's just you end up you walk up like Maryland Stadium. Is there a way to get up to the concourse level from the field? Yeah, sure there is. It involves about 60 stairs or 80 stairs or something like that, and you end up doing that. Is there Wi-Fi down on the field? Tony, of course. Tony, surely you jest. Why would you even suggest that? That's ridiculous. So yes, you're constantly going up and down stairs and running around and post game and the one day I can be certain that I will hit my step goal every week is Saturday because it's just you're running around constantly. So yes, it is.
How about where they parked us? Uphill both ways.
It was really uphill one way, but
you go uphill and then you turn the corner and you go uphill again.
Yeah, it was. You get a little haul. Yeah, and we're not here to complain about the Maryland facilities, which are substandard.
No, but it's like my morning started at 7:30. I'm down in the bistro, if you will, working, and it's still, I don't know what time it is, 4 a.m. here.
Something like that.
Still working.
What time zone are we in?
Atlantic, remember?
Yes. In 9 feet of snow, Jordan says, and yes. And people are talking about the USC and UCLA. I mean, this is. Here's the top. Here's all the playoff contenders. Georgia won 16-6 over Kentucky, who just lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Ohio State was in a dogfight against Maryland for 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Michigan had to kick a field goal at the gun to beat Illinois. TCU needed to kick a field goal at the gun to beat Baylor. Tennessee is getting absolutely blasted.
Oh, that's fine.
Final. Tennessee got absolutely blasted.
They're done
by South Carolina. Number 6 is LSU, who last I saw was up 14-10 on.
It was 21-10.
Yeah,
I'm going to assume they won.
Yes.
34-10, 2:28 left in the third.
Yeah, Tennessee, LSU beating UAB, which congratulations.
Good job.
They have 2 losses. So
who do they have next week? Is it A&M?
They have
at A&M.
I think A&M. Yeah.
A&M who looked really bad against UMass.
Yeah. Alabama looked terrible against Austin Peay, which is I read nothing into that because that's what they do. You have Clemson, who has a loss to Notre Dame. And you have USC, who is currently at 48-45, and there's still 7 minutes left in the game. I mean,
say USC loses this, so you have Georgia. Say Ohio State beats Michigan. You have Georgia, Ohio State. TCU wins out. You have Michigan. You have Clemson as an ACC champ. You have Alabama.
Who has? I think the question I'm going to ask here is, who has Clemson beaten to deserve to be in the college football? Does Clemson have a win that's better than Penn State? Because here's the thing about all these other teams falling apart. Penn State's going to just keep kind of scooting up the rankings. Penn State's going to be about the number 7 or 8 team by the time all is said and done, unless they do something stupid against Michigan
Will
State.
Clemson's best win be have they beaten Florida State? I assume they have.
Yeah, but Florida State's behind
Right, but
Penn State.
you asked for their best win. I'm like,
yeah, I mean,
don't blame me. I'm just the messenger.
yeah, and they are in the same division.
They beat Florida State by 6.
Yeah, they beat Florida State by 6. Okay, so Clemson's going to finish with and North Carolina just lost to Georgia Tech, and North Carolina was already the committee was treating them as a nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, now
beating them,
North Carolina is going to be 18, 19, something like that, and then you beat North Carolina again, and maybe they fall out of. That's the fun point where it's like if the committee wants to make the case for not including Clemson, then you drop North Carolina out of the top 25 entirely, and I don't know that Clemson's going to get the benefit of the doubt because they play kind of a boring style of football, and it's just like what's going to happen if Clemson goes to the playoff. Now, I think you kind of know what's going to happen if Michigan goes to the playoff and plays Georgia again, but it feels like they are set up to give Michigan the benefit of the doubt there over a Clemson, over a USC, and honestly. The thing that is the most certain way that Ohio State gets in with a loss to Michigan is Michigan beats Ohio State, Notre Dame beats USC, and then Ohio State has a win over a team that has beaten Clemson, beaten USC. I mean, if TCU loses, I mean, you're like Michigan, Ohio State might be another 2 versus 3 game in the semifinals.
Ohio State sending out their little brother Notre Dame to go just on tasks. Just go take care of these people for us. We got other stuff to do.
Like a mission in a video game. Go handle this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did. They beat North Carolina. They beat Clemson and could potentially beat USC as well.
Kevin is cackling for some reason.
Kevin is
I don't know. He
cackling,
must have just posted something.
I said that we have pizza coming, and Jordan Kapler jumped in with.
So you're saying to keep super chatting so the stream doesn't end and they can't eat, which, I mean, give us money for spite. That's it. I think that's our brand at this point.
A lot of people operate that way.
Yeah. Do we have questions we want to get to right now? Okay.
About 9 in the queue.
Okay, let's punch it. Let's punch through some questions. If you do have questions, throw them in the queue. We will make sure and by the way, hit the like button on this. That will help the little magical algorithm do its work. Jake says, after this week, what team looks like the best team in the country? I don't think Georgia is head and shoulders above everyone else.
That's my answer. I don't think there is. It depends on the week, depends on the matchup, depends on how that player is playing that day and how the defense holds up and how many tackles you miss. And I know so often the number one team, the SEC team, is just assumed, and it's just every benefit of the doubt is given. But you look at what they do from week to week, and sometimes they're really good. Other times it's 16-6 against Kentucky, a Kentucky team that just came off of a loss to Vanderbilt. So you can't – I don't think as anybody – like everybody has lost the benefit of the doubt nationally at this point.
Well, and you look through teams and – you can, it's easy to look at Ohio State and go, well, they look terrible against Maryland. Okay. And then you can sort of hand wave that, well, they had a bad week. Well, okay. Georgia had a bad week against Missouri. Well, Ohio State had a bad week against Northwestern. Okay. Well, Georgia had a bad week against Kentucky. And you can nitpick all this stuff. And I think the really interesting question there is, who is at their best? Who is the best? Right. If you are playing at 100%, who is the best? And I think the answer is either Ohio State or Georgia. Yeah. And that makes me think that those are the teams that are probably playing for the national championship. Because you look at all these other games and what a team does in Ohio State Maryland game on the road, look ahead situation, like how much of that do you want to write off? And same thing for Georgia and Missouri, same thing for Michigan and Illinois, same thing for TCU and Baylor. I mean, it's just all these teams, you can nitpick anyone and it's not even nitpicking. There are legitimate flaws on every team this year. There is not an unbeatable murder machine like there is some years. Fort Worth Buckeye No, Fort Wayne Buckeye. Fort Wayne Buckeye. No question. Just taking Jordan's advice. Seriously, I think Clemson will still get the benefit of the doubt if they're 12-1.
I think it's going to be difficult for the committee, especially chairman headed by an ACC athletic director. So, yeah, I'll believe that Clemson won't get in as an ACC champ when I see it. Now, assuming they are number 4 and not number 5,
Mm-hmm.
I think they would get in over Michigan. I don't think you want to match them up against Alabama because they'll look at Alabama's wins. Alabama will have enough wins to negate that 13th data point. So I think there's some stuff there that you've got to be careful about. But they have generally rewarded that one-loss conference champ, provided you did not have a terrible blowout loss. And what was it? Their loss to Notre Dame was kind of a blowout, but it was to a good Notre Dame team, not to a 7-5 eventual, Iowa or whatever.
Purdue. The only one-loss Power 5 conference champion that has been left out is 2018 Ohio State, and they had that 49-24, something like that.
49-20,
something like that. Loss at Purdue, and tonight Tennessee had that kind of game. Tennessee had that game against South Carolina, where it's a very average South Carolina team, and they just got blasted. Spencer Rattler thrown for 438 yards and 6 touchdowns, and Spencer Rattler's a fine quarterback and has the pedigree and yada yada yada. But that was a Tennessee team that if Ohio State got Tennessee in the college football playoff, Ohio State was going to put up 60 points on them too. And it's something that we talked a bunch about the fact that Tennessee was going to be a very bad matchup for Michigan because Tennessee's great against the run and terrible against the pass. And that's just not what Michigan does. This was a good night for Michigan in terms of helping them potentially get a little closer to the playoffs, even if they do lose against Ohio State. But also, if they get in, Tennessee's not going to be there.
Right.
That's also a good news for Michigan. Just looking at USC, like USC, I think USC would be a good matchup for Michigan because I think Michigan could just run the ball on them all day, all night. And
I think Caleb Williams would probably do some similar stuff to Michigan. Like he would run all over them.
Yeah.
What is a shootout for Michigan? Because they like to control the clock.
38-35.
Right. But it's like USC and UCLA, they don't allow you to control the clock because they let you score so quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's diabolical on their part. Like you think
we'll
you're going to
show you.
Yeah, you want the ball for 6 minutes? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
You'll take this 4-play drive and you'll like it, and then you'll kick an extra point.
Mark Edwards says when the score is USC 45 and UCLA 50, does the CFP committee look at these teams and say, where's the defense? Isn't a 60-44 game a signal there is no defense? Is that a negative? I mean,
yeah, they definitely look at the defense.
Yeah, they recognize that. This is a team that if you had a USC type team in there against a team that didn't have a great defense, like the committee would probably not mind in a world where Tennessee did not just get blasted by South Carolina, the committee would probably not mind a USC Tennessee type game because at least it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be, it's going to be like the USC Penn State Rose Bowl or some of the there was a Georgia Oklahoma Rose Bowl in the CFP semifinals a couple of years ago. That was, it was a high scoring. That might have one of those games ended up something like 45, and honestly, I think the other one was 52-49. At least that's a competitive, interesting game that's going to hold your interest in a way. The average college football fan, if you're watching this, you are not the person that the CFP committee is worried about because they know you're going to watch.
Right.
It's, your neighbor who, talks to you about, hey, is Justin Fields still on the team this year? Or like that's who they want to have watching. And that person is going to watch 52-49 much more than 13-6.
Well, and you might get a 13-6 with Michigan in there. Although I don't know that they can hold any of these teams to 6.
Odysseus would like to know, is Old Bay and ketchup a good combo?
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Old Bay. So no, it's just like it's overpowering. Now is Old Bay the same as bay leaves? Like, is that
no? Old Bay is a seasoning. It's mostly like paprika and some pepper and salt and stuff. It's just it is a traditional Maryland, and they will put it on like crab cakes and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
I see that.
I have Old Bay. I'll throw it on omelets and stuff. It's pretty good.
Just use salt and pepper.
You are
Some salsa.
You are a wild man.
Maybe throw a little olive oil in there.
Jake Parsons says, do you think the Buckeyes run man and crowd the box and force J.J. McCarthy to make throws to their wide receivers to actually make plays?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you need to – they'll change some things up. I don't know that you necessarily need to go all man because sometimes they will get behind you. And we saw that I think there's some concerns about which corners can hold up for Ohio State and which corners, are able to be relied upon. So they may feel better about just, we'll play some zone. But when you look at, I'm interested to see what J.J. McCarthy's numbers are following this week. Coming into the game, he was averaging like 3 completions per game against man coverage, completing like under 40% of his passes. And, he was around 50% today. So just overall, I'm not sure how that breaks down. But, yeah, I think they want to change the picture. They want to change some things up. So it won't just be constantly man coverage and it won't be press. We saw that today. It's definitely not going to be constant press. Yeah. They want a different picture constantly for him. So if you give him the same thing every time, that allows him to catch up. That allows him to time the speed of things. And so you want him always to be guessing. And then, switching back from zone to man, those sort of things, press coverage, they'll do the thing where they drop like 5 defensive backs to the same level. And it's just different things constantly to keep him from ever feeling comfortable.
Well, it's like a baseball pitcher who throws 102 miles an hour. If you just throw every pitch 102 miles an hour, eventually hitters, even if you're throwing that fast, eventually hitters can adjust and time it up. With a quarterback, if hey, they're playing all man because I'm not very good against man, so they're playing a bunch of man. There are route combinations that are known as man beaters. There are route combinations that are known as zone beaters. And if you run a zone beater against man, it's not really going to work because the whole point is that you're, finding spots that are open in the defense. Well, if you're in man coverage, those spots are not going to be open because there's going to be a dude following you through that spot.
The drag routes, the mesh routes against zone aren't necessarily there because the receiver is just running to another defender. Rather in man, that defender is chasing that receiver, and so it's different types of routes for different coverages.
I'm just marveling in just the majesty of an Alex Grinch defense once again. Thomas Clark wants to know what happens with the LSU as the SEC champion and undefeated TCU and 1-loss USC. I mean,
sorry USC.
I think it's sorry USC probably. I think that's going to be an academic conversation because I think at least 2 of those things are not going to happen. Because USC, you got to remember, assuming USC survives the game that's going on right now, and as we speak, UCLA has the ball down 3 with 1:38 left. And this is very much the last one with the ball wins vibes on this game are about off the charts. Also, LSU has to beat Georgia in Atlanta. I don't know that I see that happening. And TCU's not a given, but UCLA or USC, if they get through this one, they have to play Notre Dame next week, and then they have to play probably the Oregon Utah winner. I mean, I think it's, even if you say USC is 50-50 to win each of these games, 50-50 times 3 is 1 in 8 chance. And I don't know that right now, honestly, up 3 with UCLA having the ball, I don't know that I would even give them a 50-50 chance.
No, I mean, if they stop them and there's 2 plays here, I mean, they haven't done it yet. But I think if USC wins out and LSU wins, I'm saying sorry, Georgia, because these last 3 games that USC has played will be as good as what Georgia has done. Yeah. And they'll have a conference championship.
I'm not saying I disagree with that. And interception. So USC has survived. Boy, I feel so bad for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who just played his butt off and has been banged up and has his hand wrapped up and has a defense giving up 48 points. Woof. That is a real bummer. So, USC has survived 1. Yeah. Now they've got to beat Notre Dame next week, and then they got to beat either Oregon or Utah, I think, in the championship week. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there's a real possibility that you could make a very good case that USC has a better resume at that point, because Georgia's resume is basically Oregon and Tennessee. And Tennessee is not as impressive now. What may get them is
USC beating Oregon.
If USC beats Oregon, but USC beats Oregon 31-27, then Georgia has beaten Oregon 49-3, and that's a very easy. You know that they're going to want to put Georgia in because they think Georgia is the best team, and they talked about the fact that there's a lot of separation between number 1 and number 2 right now. So they very clearly think that Georgia's the best team. So I think that's going to be a very hard sell to get someone in over Georgia, even if, unless if LSU beats Georgia by 3 touchdowns, like, okay, we can have that conversation. I just think realistically that's probably not going to happen.
I think USC, if they win out, will have won their way in. Georgia will have lost their way in. And at some point, the losses have to matter. And the committee has always preferred wins. So, you know what? If you prefer wins, look what they just did to UCLA. Now, UCLA by this point may be like number 23, number 24, and may eventually drop out. And Notre Dame, if they beat them, Notre Dame will be dropping out to like 23 or 24. And then you get to that point where you can start to be like, you know what? Why don't we just drop them out, entirely? Now where are those ranked wins? Look at what Tennessee, look what Georgia did to Tennessee. Look what Georgia did to, did you know Kentucky is ranked this week? Vandy.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm just saying I don't think that that's what they're going to do. Marcus wants to know, what does Ohio State have to do to beat Michigan?
Well, that's we're going to be talking about that for the next week. What do they have to do to beat Michigan? Stop the run, knock down the 50-50 balls. I don't think Ohio State has to run the ball as much as Michigan has to run the ball. And I think what they've got going with Dallin Hayden and what they may have going with Mayan Williams, I think that will be a combo that can get the job done against Michigan. I think if you protect CJ Stroud and give him time to throw, he will pick Michigan apart. He will make enough plays. And if you give him time to throw, the more time you give him to throw, the less you have to be able to run the ball. I think if you can move the chains throwing the ball, this is one of those years where the yards per carry number, that whoever averages more yards per carry wins the game. You could toss that out. But I also don't think that it's necessarily a done deal that Michigan is going to run the ball for more yards per carry than Ohio State, because Ohio State's run defense is pretty darn good. Yeah,
and I don't know if Michigan's going to be able to run the ball to constantly pick up 5 yards. That's what they've done all year, is they've been able to pick up 5 yards when they absolutely need it, or pick up 3 yards when they absolutely need it, so that 3rd and 4 turns into 4th and 1, which turns into 1st and 10. If Ohio State can get off the field on 3rd down, there is absolutely a way that if Ohio State can get off the field on 3rd down, that's can you when they run it on 3rd and 6, can you turn it into 4th and 4 instead of 4th and 2? Because if it's 4th and 2, they're going to be running it, and they're going to go for it again. And if it's 4th and 4, that's a little bit tougher.
How about Jim Harbaugh running the ball on 3rd and longs as often as he does? The lack of confidence in J.J. McCarthy to throw a pass 7 yards to complete, and you're running from 3rd. It's like the old whenever you see a football game, college football game from the 70s, and it's Woody Hayes, and it's 3rd and 7. You know what we're going to do? We're going to run the ball up the middle and pick up 8 yards or pick up no yards. And what you can't do is you can't throw it, because that's dangerous, and it's not. I mean, why even throw the ball? It's not actually a real thing. But yeah, this is not the first time he's done it this week. Where you run the ball on 3rd and long. They've done it several times before, and the I don't know if it's handcuffs that they play with JJ McCarthy. They're very careful, overly careful at times, but they see more in practice than we do. So it's if they felt comfortable letting him just throw the ball all over the place, they probably would do it because Wilton Spade has thrown the ball around. Jake Rudock has thrown the ball around. Shea Patterson has thrown the ball around. Your boy John O'Corn has thrown the ball around. Kate McNamara has thrown the ball around. You know who has not thrown the ball around? J.J. McCarthy.
Well, and they've tried. You've seen them trying to throw the ball downfield, and it hasn't worked. And I don't want to put 100% on J.J. McCarthy either, because some of it's on J.J. McCarthy, but the receiving core is just not tremendous for Michigan. That's just they have a great offensive line.
Yep.
They've got Blake Corum as a fantastic running back, but the receiving core is just kind of meh. And normally they sort of fall back on the tight end, and the tight ends, you got a couple of your top 2 tight ends are hurt this year. That's a concern, I think. There was a comment, and I've now lost it on here, but someone said, Michigan runs it on 3rd and long, and Ohio State throws it on 4th and 1. And they did that against Maryland, and I didn't have a great view of that play, but it looked like they rolled Stroud out and had Marvin Harrison running out. Like, it seems like you pull it and you throw a quick slant to Marvin Harrison. Like, and if they're playing inside technique, okay, that obviously changes that. But that feels like put him in motion and then run a quick slant to him or something like that. Like, I'm fine with doing that. That just seemed like a weird call to me.
I think there is going to be a post that was going to open up on that. But as Ryan said after the game, they had max protect, and there was some leakage there, and they were able to get in there, and that can't happen because they believe they were going to have a pretty easy pitch and catch there. The thing about that is the last few weeks, Ohio State has struggled running the ball 3rd and short, and so people have been clamoring, you can throw the ball on in short, short yardage situations. You can throw the ball. So they throw it on 4th down, and people are like, "Why are you throwing it on 4th down?" And not taking a shot at the comment there, just at other people who are, whatever you do and it doesn't work. You're like, oh, why didn't you do the other thing? And like, well, we thought this was going to work, and they obviously felt that it would have, but the max protect didn't hold up. I also was thinking, you've got Dallin Hayden going. Things are moving pretty well. You can get a yard. You want to prove to everybody and to your team and to yourself that you can go get that yard. But also, they thought they were going to have that shot. And they've hit it before. They've done that in the past. They'll throw on 4th and short. They did it to Kate Stover, 3rd and short, 4th and short in the past. And they've taken some shots downfield over the years. And I think they like the looks that they get because obviously it's probably 0 coverage. You've got everybody up at the line of scrimmage. And so this is as advantageous as a passing situation as you are ever going to face. And now you just need to have confidence in your quarterback and your receiver to make the play, and also your offensive line. And that's a lot of facets all coming into play and executing, and didn't work that time.
Jackie says the Buckeye offense just seems uninterested as of late. I don't know that they're uninterested. It just feels like they're a little out of sync more than anything else, right?
Well, we've gone through phases with C.J. Stroud where maybe he has seemed uninterested or bored. Remember that when that was a thing earlier in the season, or maybe mid-season at this point, where he talked about, I just need to make sure I don't get bored. And then I asked Ryan Day, is C.J. Stroud getting bored? No, that's just word. That's just a phrase to use. I promise you he's not bored. And you shouldn't be bored. But as we talked about in the instant reaction show, there are people saying that the most energy on the sideline was coming from the coaches and not the players. But I don't think that's going to be an issue for anybody next week. And so what happens this week against Illinois and against Maryland, the energy is going to be tenfold.
Yeah, you can injuries are going to be a part of the conversation about that game. The weather. I just someone referenced the weather, and I just pulled it up just to be sure. Yes, the Saturday in the morning, cloudy with a mixture of rain and snow in the morning, remaining mostly cloudy in the afternoon. High of 41, winds 10 to 20 miles an hour, chance of rain 40%. I mean, that sounds suspiciously like an Ohio State Michigan game to me. Yeah, that just you're going to have. Will someone get sick this week?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had all of these conversations, but yeah, we lost focus. That this is not the game. This is not the game where that's going to be a conversation. I've seen photos of Michigan's weight room where it says, beat Ohio State in big letters on the wall. Ryan Day talks about the fact that they work the Michigan game every day of the year. They have a huge wall inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center with photos and videos and a countdown to the game. I mean, this is not one where you can say, well, we overlooked them because we were looking ahead to either Purdue or Iowa. Like, no, I don't think that's probably it.
No, and it's finally here. And that was a couple of things that Ryan Day said. I asked him, hey, you can finally talk about Michigan now. What's it been like the last year living with that Michigan loss? And obviously it's not been easy, but they have worked on it all year. And he said, the week is finally here. And all of the chips go in this week. And talking to Zach Harrison after the game, what's it been like living with this loss for a year? And it's like you get tired of hearing about it because you hear about it from everybody and from Coach Mick and all of the coaches, and the score is always displayed. And this number of push-ups because of this score, this many rushing yards, that sort of thing, where the numbers get incorporated into what you have to do on a daily basis. And not unlike the code for the Woody in 2007 was changed to 4114 to get in, to remind everybody going into the building of the score that you lost to Florida by.
Would you like to hear something extremely upsetting? And I recognize that the answer to that is sort of reflexively no, but there are two teams currently tied for the top of the Big Ten West standings right now.
Okay.
Iowa and Purdue. Final score from the head-to-head matchup, Iowa 24, Purdue 3. So Purdue plays Indiana next week. They should win the bucket game. So then it will come down to, Tony, who do we have? Who is the superhero we have to save us from a week of having to talk about Iowa football again?
The Cornhuskers.
The Nebraska Cornhuskers. Tony, do you know what the Nebraska Cornhuskers did today?
How much?
I'll give you a hint. They had a 14-3 lead in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin.
Oh, no, I heard Graham Mertz rushed for a touchdown in that one and probably won the game.
15-14. Tony.
Well, I'm sure Friday football for Iowa and Nebraska. Is that game in Iowa City? Does it matter?
Does it matter is the correct question. It appears to be in Iowa City, yes.
Tom, I see Kevin looking over at the pizzas.
I'm being good.
All right. So should we wrap up? Is that we should wrap up?
I never said anything. I think that's Tony looking over at the people.
Well, I mean, it is. We got to let people get going. We've been almost here for an hour. Anything that we have not touched on in the questions and comments?
No, I mean, just a lot of people wanting to talk about games, things that we covered in the post-game show. Jake Parsons with a good thing about somebody was popping off, a Michigan fan saying that they were going to score 50. Last time Michigan scored 50 against Ohio State was 1946, and he said, agreed, they're not built to score 50. They're built to score 30 and run the clock.
Yeah, and that's it. If Michigan wins that game, Michigan is doing that by winning. Michigan wins 31-27. Like, that's how Michigan wins that game, 35-31. And that I think the thing for Ohio State fans this week, I'm sure we're going to have Ohio State fans just climbing the walls all week because it's Ohio State Michigan week. But the way Michigan is built to win this game is also that game is a game that probably gets Ohio State into the college football playoff with 35-31, 31-27. That probably gets Ohio State into the college football playoff with the win over Penn State, the win over Notre Dame. The fact that the committee views them as superior to Michigan right now, if you have a close game, decided late, one play here or there, Ohio State's offense is one that, the committee would probably not mind seeing.
Does last year's loss get them in? If it happens, that kind of loss where you do get dominated, but it's a 15-point game. However, the committee has shown that they recognize a dominating effort and a dominating performance, a one-sided affair that is a two-score game, because they said the same thing about Georgia over Tennessee. That was a one-sided game, but it was two scores. Was this game one-sided? Ohio State had opportunities late. It's been a while since I've watched the game, Tom.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like last year's Ohio State Michigan game was a 2-score game that was a 1-score game until very late. Tennessee Georgia was a 3-score game that was that then turned into a 2-score game. That's kind of a different thing. If you kind of backdoor cover your way into a 2-score loss, that's kind of different than having the ceiling touchdown. The football equivalent of the empty net goal or whatever. I think it would be very difficult for me to see Ohio State losing by 3 scores at home against Michigan. I mean, I could see. I think, last week I said I think I could see, 40% chance of Michigan winning close, 40% chance of Ohio State winning close, and like a 20% chance that Ohio State gets up, Michigan gets behind. You have to start getting out of your comfort zone. You can't run the ball anymore. You got to start throwing it, and you have the big mistake, and then it turns into a 17, 20 point Ohio State win. Like a 20% chance that happens, something like that. Not super likely, but just a possibility. And I don't see how Michigan, unless CJ Stroud just implodes or something like that, and you have a crazy turnover. I don't really see Michigan winning by 17, 20 points in Columbus.
Do we want to throw out some preliminary scores that we promised in the instant reaction show?
Did we promise?
We teased it. That's not a promise ever.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, Kevin's going to go first.
Let me think of something first. Give me some Jeopardy music, Kevin.
We would lose our copyright status if we did that.
All right.
34-28 Ohio State.
I don't have anything immediately popping in.
Yeah.
Now I am at like 37-20. Oh,
wow, that's a lot of points.
And it's a lot of red zone failures.
Yeah.
I don't really have 31-20. I don't really have anything like hitting me just yet where it's like, okay, this makes sense. This never makes sense. And this never makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But 30 something to 20 feels like a good number, but I just saw what in the heck did I just see there? I just saw
Tony Bo Nix, Tony.
Saw Maryland go up and down the field. So, but I've seen Michigan's offense struggle. So 30 something to 20 something, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think anyone gets into the 40s. I don't think. Now, I mean, there's a way it happens. I don't think that's the most likely scenario. I would say like a 31-24, 31-27 kind of game, maybe. And I'm leaning Ohio State here, and I think it's probably, like I said, I'm like 60-40 Ohio State, like where there's like a 40% chance Michigan wins close, 40% chance Ohio State wins close, and like a 20% chance Ohio State wins by a bunch. But like the low 30s to the high 20s. I don't think this is a game where you're going to see, the big explosive Ryan Day offense explodes for 56 points against Michigan. And I reserve the right to change my mind later in the week. I'm sure I will, because we're going to talk this through so many times that I will definitely change my mind at some point.
Well, and we may have to do this every single day. Like, okay, what are you feeling right now? 27, 26.
Temperature check.
Yeah, temperature check. So I think we'll wrap us up then. I want to thank you all for joining us on a Saturday night, 11 o'clock, Saturday Night Live here in the hotel in somewhere in Maryland.
Live from Landover.
Hey, there you go. It sounds like a nice public access show.
It's Sunday morning.
And Sunday morning. So want to thank you all, and we'll let you go. But appreciate the chats, appreciate the questions, the super chats, just hanging out with us, waiting for us, and then joining us. That will do it from here. Please check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. You can find us there at any point, at any time. You don't have to wait for us there on a Saturday at 11 p.m. You can find us there on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. Hit us up there. Say hello there. Become a member. And, of course, you can find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, as you know. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.